in a world full of negative people. Hey man, I'm just trying to be a positive guy, a positive farmer, a positive outfitter. This is a Shark Farmer podcast with your host, Rob Sharkey. Whatever.
And welcome again to Shark Farmer Podcast. Hey, I'm your host, Rob Sharkey, and today we're going to go out to Ohio, Moscow, Ohio. Sounds very Soviet-ish. Today we're going to be talking to a couple, Josh and Sarah Ison. How you guys doing?
Great.
Doing great. Thanks for having us.
Now, where are you guys sitting? Where are you taking this interview?
I'm chuckling at that because we're actually in my parents' bedroom.
Okay. All right.
This is like the makeshift conference room these days.
It's really quiet.
Okay. Does that bring back memories?
Not
No.
me.
So where is Moscow in Ohio?
We are in kind of the southwest corner, about 40 minutes east of Cincinnati, right on the Ohio River.
Okay. Now, are you guys Ohio natives?
We both are. Yep. We are currently living in the same county that we both grew up in.
Okay. What county's that?
Claremont County.
Oh, yeah. I've never heard of that.
No.
All right, Josh and Sarah, I've got to roll into my ad. Is that okay?
Sure.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Shark Farmer TV. I'm sure Josh and Sarah have them all DVR'd and are waiting to watch them all, aren't you?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. It's Tuesday nights on RFD Network. It's on at 8:30 Central. That's 9:30 Eastern. Yes, and then the replay is on Saturday at 1:30 Central. You can also go to YouTube, Shark Farmer, one word, and I think I've got the first 3 episodes up. See, Josh and Sarah, I don't have internet because a grain leg fell down. Do you guys have those issues in Ohio?
Yes, we don't have internet either. It's down on the main road, but that would cost about $50,000 to get it to the house, and that's just not in the budget right now. So,
But
It's
we
only
make
money.
do with mobile hotspots.
yeah.
Do you just use your phones, or do you got the little, I don't know, jump packs or whatever they're called?
I have a jump pack, thank you to courtesy of Northern Kentucky University, since I was teaching all online last semester.
You stole it?
No, they provided it to me so I could communicate with the students effectively.
Right.
Uh-huh.
And then depending on what time of month, we either use a different phone if we run out of the personal hotspot
Yeah.
usage.
I've been provided with stuff too, you thieves. You can watch the show on RFD Network. Emily and I cannot be more happy to be working with RFD. I wish I could tell you stuff because we've got some big things coming with RFD TV, RFD Network, and yes, it's going to be great things. We're excited. I can't tell you about it though, Josh and Sarah, because the ink's not dry yet. You know what I'm saying?
That's understandable.
Yeah.
We're
What's
looking forward to it.
Okay. I could tell that you guys have never seen the show, and that's okay.
We don't have cable,
Okay.
so we definitely would watch it if we did.
You can go to YouTube and watch it on your stolen jump pack.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, they said I could keep it for the time being, so we're good.
Uh-huh. Okay. Let's get into who you two are. First of all, you are married, correct?
Yes, we
Yeah.
are. Last time I checked.
How many years?
8. Yeah.
Okay. I would like the audience to know that we did not edit that pause. It took that long for them to remember.
Right.
8 years. Where'd you guys meet?
So that's a funny story. Actually, Sarah and I knew each other through 4-H when we were growing up, and we happened to be the king and queen the same year at our county fair. But at that point, Sarah was too good to talk to me, But later on, we were both in college at Morehead State University in Kentucky. Sarah was finishing up her master's, and I was just finishing up with my bachelor's, and we started dating there, and the rest is history.
Okay. Sarah, how come you wouldn't talk to him back in the day?
I was just a little bit older, a little bit wiser.
Right.
Uh-huh. But yet, he achieved royalty at a younger age than you did. You think you'd be all over that.
That is very true. That's true. I had my sights set on some other opportunities at the time.
Okay. This got real awkward real quick, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, interview a couple, Emily said. It'll be fun, she said.
Right.
Okay, what does a king and queen of 4-H do?
You have to smile the entire time, and
Mhm.
you're in so many different pictures and handing out awards and shaking hands and kissing a few babies. But overall, being an advocate and trying to also be a role model to the younger youth that are beginning their stints. So it was something that we'd always looked forward to. But then, when you're actually in doing that, it was honestly one of the most stressful fairs I'd ever been a part of, just because you not only have your projects going, but then every bit of downtime, you're actually off doing some other activity or being at a different event. So it was overall a very good experience.
Yeah, except for the queen not talking to you. Now, was this a pageant or like a fight to the death or jarts or cornhole? How do you get to be king and queen of 4-H?
You submit an application and they look at your previous experience as far as leadership experience in your 4-H groups within your local community, church group, and then they have an interview portion where they ask you in front of a panel of judges, and then the day of the competition, they give you an on-stage interview question. Normally the question's the same for each of the participants, pretty much talking about what you want to do as a role model for the youth of the fair.
Sarah, you had a farm background, but you did not, Josh, is that correct?
Correct. So I kind of grew up, not quite in the suburbs, but my parents were both in education and my mom was actually in nursing. But my grandparents had a small, you'd almost call it a hobby farm. So that's how I got interested in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then 4-H is one of those good organizations where you can get kids involved at a young age. And, I'm one of the ones that took it maybe a couple steps further and pursued it as a career. But yeah, it was interesting how, not coming from a farming background, going into a career, how that gives me kind of a different perspective on things.
Sure.
But now, we're full in on the farming thing with the cows and all the other livestock we have running around here. So, so far it's been good.
I met my wife in 4-H.
We are like really good at these awkward pauses.
It's like you don't believe me. Yeah. Yeah. I was putting my hands to greater service. You know what I mean?
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. You can use that, Josh, if you want to.
Don't give me ideas.
Okay, let's talk about education. You guys both have PhDs, correct?
Correct.
In what field is that in?
All right, we have our PhDs in animal science. We studied in pre-harvest food safety and epidemiology.
Okay, that's not like your common business one. How did you both get into that specific of a field?
Actually, one of the things that looking back, was we both always jumped at any opportunity. If there was a door open, we went through it, just pursued every opportunity that we had, and it just came together that way. We were very fortunate when we were at Morehead State that one of our advisors had come from Texas Tech through a similar program that we ended up going through eventually. And so that was one aspect of it. And then Sarah did some time at Ohio State and working in a similar field. And so that was how, she knew that was the path that she had wanted to go down. And to be honest, we were dating at the time and I knew where I wanted to be and who I wanted to be with. So I took a leap of faith and went with her.
Okay, food safety, animal science, epidemiology. What exactly is that?
It's the study of diseases and distribution of those diseases in a population. So if we look at, let's use coronavirus for example, and that's what's going on. So if you look at that virus, you would look to see how many people have that virus and where is that virus occurring. And then how are ways that you can control that virus or stop it?
Okay. Did we do this whole corona thing right? You guys able to talk on that?
Maybe I shouldn't have brought that up, but I think when you're looking at a novel virus and something we don't know a lot about, I think initially it was a really good idea to quarantine because we don't know how it's going to affect people. What if it did kill half the population really quickly and it spread really fast? So we still are learning a lot about it every day and trying to decide the best course of action. In Ohio, we were one of the first states to probably quarantine and close down. And so we're now just starting to open back up with our governor orders, following CDC recommendations on how to keep the population safe. And we still don't know. I know a lot of people were getting really upset because the information they were getting were changing daily. But what we do know is that's a good thing because that means that we're learning new things about it every day and how to best protect the general population.
All right, when you guys were in Texas Tech in animal science, were you studying bats at all?
Unfortunately, no. I did have one statistics professor that all of his research was focused on bats, and he was always talking about species richness and diversity, and we really had no idea what he was talking about other than it was just with bats.
Did you guys, all right, behind his back, was that the professor that was bat crazy?
He was a nice guy. Yeah.
Okay. Did you guys get married in school or after?
So we moved to Texas in the fall of 2011. And then we got married in the spring of 2012.
Okay.
And we started at the second 2011.
What was your first jobs then?
We were technically graduate research assistants. So we worked in a research microbiology laboratory doing a wider range of different projects associated with food safety and pre-harvest food safety. So really, like if you want to sum it all up, we worked with a lot of cow poop.
Well, here's the thing. Talk about the antibiotic, the carryover. I know we talked about this some with Sarah on the radio show. I mean, that is a subject that generally when people bring up, it's like anti-agriculture, right? Because they want to prove that using antibiotics in modern agriculture is bad and how it's going to harm society. Were you almost a minority studying this in more of a pro-livestock setting?
I don't know if a pro-livestock, but in a way that we need to understand what's going on. Is agriculture contributing to antibiotic resistance? Is the use of antibiotics in animals contributing to antibiotic resistance? We have to study that in order to determine if it's actually happening. I think what's important to know is antibiotic resistance is not new. It's been around for millions and millions of years in deep cave dwellings prior to humans even existing. So what we do know is that the use of any antibiotics, whether in animals or humans, does change the pathogen load and the pathogens or bacteria that are present. And with that, then those bacteria changing can harbor resistance. And so as you see different uses of antibiotics, they can change the resistance that's present in that bacteria.
You're looking at it as a scientist. It wasn't pro-livestock or anti-livestock.
Right, absolutely. I mean, I know there's some findings that probably some people weren't happy about, but what we're really concerned about is making sure that we have the best interest from a public health perspective, so for humans and animals. Since 2011, there's been the World Health Organization has made a list of critically important antibiotics for human medicine. So antibiotics that are used to treat humans when they're sick, and those antibiotics are no longer allowed in livestock production. So the only way we can find that out is if we do research and then continue to monitor those specific antibiotic resistance genes or plasmids that are present in the bacteria.
I used to raise hogs, right? And you'd give them a shot of penicillin. So I would assume penicillin is pretty important to humans. So is it you can't use penicillin in pigs anymore, that type of thing?
Correct. I would have to check on exactly what different strains, because there's different types of classes of antibiotics. So penicillin and beta-lactamases. So yeah, there's going to be certain antibiotics that you might not be able to use in livestock that you previously could have used.
So like how much Yeah, and I know you don't have it right in front of you, but has there been a lot of antibiotics that have been taken off the market for livestock in, let's say, the last 10 years?
I probably should know exactly the number, but I don't. There has not been that many antibiotics, more of just specific classes. So third generation cephalosporin, so those are reserved for human use. And that's a specific group that's going to target really, really kind of dangerous bacteria that people get normally when they're in a hospital setting and an acquired infection. So people who are really, really sick, that specific class, and very few of those were ever really used in livestock to begin with, but now they're just saying, hey, we're not going to use them over there, we're going to save them for humans.
I don't remember exactly how many antibiotics have been pulled away from animal use, but you ought to also consider the low number of antibiotics that are continuing to come onto the market, just based on the budget that's required to pull up and develop a new drug or antibiotic. And then, if there's no incentive for drug companies to discover and try to bring on more antibiotics just due to, if, say, it falls in a certain class that's deemed medically necessary or medically important, then there would be some type of regulation on how much could be used. So it's not always the most economic field to be in. So that's why there's a lot of concern around conserving current antibiotics that we have for use in different applications.
Okay. Obviously just your opinion, but do you think this whole COVID thing, do you think it'll change the outlook on that? Do you think there'll be like a renewed interest in getting brand new antibiotics?
Well, that's a little different because that's a virus, so it's a viral infection and not an antibiotic. So your antibiotics are going to be just targeting bacteria. Sometimes you'll use an antibiotic if you have a virus just to stop a secondary infection from occurring, but it may allow for more money to be put towards the
either vaccines or antivirals.
So like if you get the flu and you get, what's the flu little pills that you take? Tamiflu. So it might allow for more money to be put towards that type of research.
Usually if I ask a dumb question, we edit it out, but I think it's going to be impossible with this podcast because there are going to be too many.
Sorry.
No.
We need to simplify our answers.
No. I don't know. I love talking about this because it's something I don't know about. And obviously with the COVID, I know you're dealing with livestock, but obviously it does. It kind of gets a renewed interest in what exactly things do and stuff like that. So no, you keep talking. You keep talking smart. I'll understand.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really valid question. I mean, people think that when you get sick, you go to the doctor and get antibiotics. Well, probably 85+% of the time, or 90% of the time. I'm not a physician. I don't know what the percentage is, but most people have a viral infection, and so an antibiotic's not going to make you feel better. It mentally may make you feel better, but what you're doing by taking an antibiotic, if you don't have a bacterial infection, is you yourself are contributing to an increase of potentially antibiotic resistance. In human medicine, I'd say there's a higher chance of it being overprescribed of antibiotic use versus veterinary medicine. The first course of action is not treatment with antibiotics. They're not cheap. And so you want to give the animal a little bit of time to see if it's able to recover from a systemic infection without treatment. And then maybe within a couple of days, you might use an antibiotic because most likely it was a bacterial infection just based on the environment that the animal's living in. If we look at cattle, we vaccinate our cattle against a lot of the preventable diseases. We're not going to treat, and it's going to be highly unlikely that it's a viral infection. So the antibiotic's going to treat that bacterial infection, or it has a secondary infection from a viral.
I love asking scientists their opinions because they're used to science, but I'm going to do it again. In your opinion, do you think most people know what you just said? Or do you think the assumption is that agriculture is blasting livestock with antibiotics willy-nilly?
Most people really just think that antibiotics are overused in animal agriculture. And That's why it's important to get to know a farmer, get to know a rancher, get to know a veterinarian, and talk to them about antibiotic use, when we use it, when we don't use it. And we have 75 cows, and in the last 2 years, we treated one calf with a 3-day antibiotic regimen because she was kind of an orphan from her mom, and we know got a bacterial infection, and that was it. And my kids have been on, my son had ringworm. He's been on 6-week courses of antibiotics. Antifungals, yeah.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think it's very eye-opening is when we'll be at a farmer's market, or just somebody finds out that we direct market beef and pork and that, and they'll say, it's really good that we can find somebody that's doing it the right way and doing everything you are, because I've had all the stuff that comes from China and it's pumped full of all of the steroids, hormones, and antibiotics. And on one hand, you want to say, well, yeah, definitely, you should buy my product, but we don't want to really bash the industry and our colleagues. We're trying to find some middle ground to talk to our consumers of, some operations actually have very, very good animal health protocols and probably actually have a veterinarian full-time on staff that we just simply can't afford on our operation. But it's one of those difficult conversations that we keep finding that people are interested to learn, kind of like your question, but their preconceived notions are that everybody's trying to do it the cheap way and pumping them full of anything that'll help.
Well, thank you for being honest on that, because I've interviewed people before that have said, I let these people talk, because when I try to correct them, they move to the next booth, and that's it. And that's got to be tough for people that are selling direct, especially with the consumers. You got to find that balance. And I know we haven't talked about it. You guys do have a herd. Have you found it difficult to find a balance between embarking the knowledge that you have probably better than anybody, and on the other hand, trying to make a sale?
We do have, I think, an interesting perspective when it comes to answering those tough questions. I'm not going to provide false information from a marketing standpoint just to sell a pound or two of ground beef. I've been working my entire life in this field and studying it to know what the facts are. I don't want to just throw those in people's faces, but sharing our story, how we spent 5+ years in feedlots and large abattoirs in Texas and Colorado, New Mexico. We've seen it. We've been there firsthand. We really know what's going on, and very, very few people have. So I think sharing that part of it, and then sharing what we do on our farm that may be a little different, and some of those practices on our farm that maybe are a little different than what goes on in a large feedlot, is mainly because our management decisions, there's 2 of us plus my mom and dad when they're able to be. We're not ranching full time, so we can't be there 100% of the time. So we do things that work for us and work for our operation. And I think using practices for each operation, like no operation is the same. I did a study, looked at 4 different large feedlots of 50,000 head capacities and compared them, and they're all owned by the same entity, but they all had differences in their management practices, difference in the bacteria that were in the cattle, and they're all within 5 miles of each other. So it's really just making sure you're using the best practices for your operation that are going to provide a safe food. You're putting animal welfare as the top priority and making sure that you're producing a really safe, nutritious product for your consumers.
Okay, you guys, obviously highly educated, obviously very smart, and then you go ahead and decide to raise cattle, which kind of negates everything I just said. What was the decision to go ahead and start doing that?
The big thing was having our daughter in December of 2015. So we graduated in 2016, in the spring and summer of 2016. But I think after we had her, we had a couple months to really think about what our next move was going to be.
Yeah, we both knew eventually we wanted to have our own little piece of paradise farm, whatever you want to call it. But the biggest thing for us that really struck was we have really good relationships with our grandparents from when we grew up. We wanted to give our daughter, and now our son as well, that opportunity to grow up around family. So we finished up at Texas Tech and graduated, and we said, let's just give ourselves 6 months. Let's move home, figure it out. And if we don't find a position or something within that time frame, we'll look elsewhere. And I swear it was like 5.5 months. We both had some odds and ends that we were doing. Sarah was a postdoc still at Texas Tech, but working remotely. And then I landed a position with my current company. And, it was one of those moments of, wow, we can actually do this. And, the other thing is, if you want something in life, you might as well go after it. And so here we are, however many years later, still going after it. But then now that COVID hits, I would say just in seeing a few job postings, I've seen how many people are working remotely now. I'd say one thing that COVID has done to this way of life is we'll see a lot more people working remotely and potentially moving back out to the country. Granted, they have good internet, but...
Yeah, I completely agree with that. You are selling direct to consumer? Is that everything you're raising is going direct?
Yeah, everything that we're raising. Before we graduated and decided to move home, we convinced my dad to keep his feeder calves back and not sell them, and we were going to finish them out and raise them. And so in 2016, I started our direct-to-consumer business. So I sell all of our beef and now poultry and pork direct-to-consumer as well. We don't sell anything through traditional markets.
Oh, you guys are going the triple threat? You're raising everything?
I got my Queen pigs that we got last year. Love them. And then we pretty much quadrupled our poultry production and invested in the mobile range coop.
Well, when you start at zero, it's pretty easy to scale up.
I wasn't going to ask. But that's exactly what I thought.
That's not true. I raised 800 last year, and then this year I'm raising 2,400,
right,
and hopefully 3,200 next year.
Tell me about these pigs, because that's a really specific breed.
It is. They are originally from New Zealand. About 10 years ago, they were endangered. The breed really had kind of ran out. And then they were able to repopulate it through some work at zoos kind of around the world. And they kind of look like a potbelly pig. They can be all different types of colors, but they're a really good pasture-based pig. So they eat primarily grass and hay. Mm-hmm. They do take around a year to finish out and grow, but they're a smaller size. And for us, we have 2 small kids, and that was really a big thing to raise something that was really going to be friendly and our kids could be around as well and be a part of our everyday working with the animals. I mean, with the cattle, they can be there, but it's still at this age, they're 2 and 4. They can't help with the cattle probably as much as Declan, our youngest, wants to do. But the pigs, they can really be involved in feeding them every day and being out there and working with them. They create a really well marbled meat that has a really clean white fat in it. So it's going to be really nutrient dense and really flavorful, and we feel like it complements our beef that we produce really well. They're also a low environmental impact pig, so they don't root like traditional pigs would. They're pretty darn cute.
What she's trying to say is they're very, very productive.
Gotcha.
When Sarah was trying to convince me that we just had to get these pigs, it was definitely like we'll think about it. And then finally we just said, the heck with it, let's go for it. And these pigs, continue to surprise me every day. We've raised a few of the more traditional
We've done some other heritage breeds like Berkshire Large Black.
Within 20 minutes of putting them out in a quote-unquote wood lot that everybody, expects the pigs to be raised in, they had it down to dirt. And these coonies, while we may need a bit more grass in their current pen before we move them, they are truly low impact. That's big for us, especially where we have a lot of clay and hillsides, and we don't want to deal with runoff or erosion issues. And so these pigs have turned out to be a perfect little complement to our operation.
They sound like the French bulldog of pigs, just kind of ugly and unique.
Oh, that's perfect.
So how are you marketing this stuff?
So marketing, I started out just talking to people in our local community. I looked at farmers markets that were in Cincinnati. Since we're so close, I knew that was the market that I wanted to hit hard. Being pretty close to a metropolitan area, it seemed like a really good initial jump into it. And so I started at traditional farmers markets. And then from there, I attended a small business course with 5 Mary's small business course last April. And she taught me how to market my animals using social media, so Instagram, Facebook, and sharing our ranch story that way. And through that program, I was able to connect with people all across the country. And now I ship my meats from New York, Maine, Florida, California, all through social media marketing and free social media marketing, just sharing our farm on Instagram.
That amazes me. You know, we've talked to a bunch of people that have done just that, but it doesn't seem to me like when you're saying it, well, I'll just get on social media, I'll show how we're raising it, and people want to buy it. It doesn't sound like it's going to happen. But here you have had proof. Now, is there a timeline? Did it take 6 months to get recognized, or did you go after specific audiences? How did that all work?
So I think what's really kind of cool about social media is just making connections with people. I would say it probably took me around 8 months from the time that I took that course and started implementing our Instagram page and starting it to then where I was really shipping. And then it just so happened that, yes, COVID hit, and so a lot more people needed meat products and started looking for other sources of meat really quickly earlier this year, just a couple months ago. And so from that, I was able to make a lot more connections with consumers than probably I wouldn't have that quickly.
The majority of our customer base for the first couple of years was bulk, because we found quite a few people that had purchased a quarter or a half of a steer or a pig before.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very easy market to capture when you have a product that's well priced and meets on all the quality points.
I try to do things that are easy for the customer. All of our meat's USDA inspected, so I can pick it up from our processor, which is an hour and a half away, and then I deliver it directly to them. They only work with me. They don't have to worry about talking to a processor, figuring out what cuts to order, how it's going to be packaged, taking off work to go pick it up. So I try to make it a nice little bundle for them, as convenient for them as possible. And with that, you also get a little bit better premium price on your product than what you're selling if you were to just do it wholesale.
It's a labor of love.
What's the goal? I mean, if you could wave a wand, what would your farm operation look like in 5 years?
5 years. We're slowly increasing the genetics of our cattle and investing pretty much every penny we make back into growing that herd with really high quality Angus cattle, because we know at the end of the day, to produce a quality product, you have to start with a quality genetics. And so we are growing that herd, and we like to be at about 100 beef that we're finishing a year within the next 5 years is what our big beef goal is. Hopefully the coonies will come along a little bit better. They're a little bit slower, but we are growing those. And then the poultry, we'll just see kind of where that's at. I like the flexibility of being an entrepreneur and working for myself, also teaching part-time, having the kids, and consulting from a food safety standpoint. So I think it's a good balance between all of them to have each of those kind of different niches that we're working in.
I have had you on the radio show, and one thing that you mentioned on the radio show is that you come from a family of entrepreneurs, correct?
Yep. My grandpa, and he had a twin brother and another brother that started a horse riding stables in the early 60s. And I think that was kind of the first kickoff of entrepreneurship, where they ran, I'd say it was a dude ranch, kind of a dude ranch at the time.
Mm-hmm.
They had cowboys and stuff here in Southern Ohio, which wasn't really heard of, and 200 horses and people coming for trail rides and cookouts every weekend. And then my dad and my uncle started a telecommunications company about 35 years ago in Cincinnati, and they are still in business. And my uncle also has another media company as well. So I have lots of entrepreneurs. I've got uncles that own their own businesses, pools, and salvage yards. And so, yeah, long family of entrepreneurs and salespeople. And when I was asked during one of my PhD meetings with a professor, she asked me what I wanted to do when I graduated. And I told her absolutely under no circumstance did I want to work in sales. And now I'm like, oh, that's what I'm doing. She told me everything you do in life, you're going to be selling, whether it's selling yourself, selling your resume to get a job. And now I'm working in sales every day selling meat. So
yeah.
It was probably one of the best advice that I had that I didn't really appreciate at the time. And now I get what she means.
Growing up around entrepreneurs, it rubs off on you, don't you think?
It does. I've always been around it, so I don't really know any different. But you definitely have a drive and a focus of you get up and go to work every day to work for yourself to reach your goals. You set your goals pretty high and you want to attain them, and you're dependent on yourself. You're not relying on an employee doesn't show up. Well, tough luck, the work still has to get done during the day, and payroll has to be met and bills have to be paid. So we talk sales a lot in our family, and how do you sell and market? How do you find new customer bases? And where do you invest money in? And right now it's, we had some difficult conversations, when COVID hit, of how do you manage the businesses? You start to really kind of hold tight on your reins on your expenditures.
Sarah's still working on that. I just want to throw that in there.
But those are things I think in a business that you really have to consider and look at the long-term implications. Maybe my customers wouldn't have bought our meat. I know I was in probably a different position than a lot of other businesses for February, March, April.
What about your background, Josh? Was there entrepreneurs in the family?
Yeah, I would say so. So my grandparents actually both had retired from education, and in their early 30s and 40s, they started investing in rental properties. So I've been around that side. That as a business, I'm proud to say that we've just bought our first rental property about 6 months ago. Not like we didn't have enough going on already. So being around that, and, my uncle had worked for himself before. So is it in my blood? I've been around it, but, I still need to listen to the occasional podcast or something to figure out how to have more of a entrepreneurial mindset. But raising the cows and trying to work towards a goal that Sarah and I have started towards is definitely puts you and helps stay in that mindset all the time.
I think we mentioned, Josh, you have a full-time job. Sarah, you're doing some teaching too. So do you feel you want to move away from that? Are you always in your vision, would you have this businesses, your rentals and all this stuff, but yet still utilizing your education and your experience?
I still want to use my education. I really enjoy the teaching. Now, it might not be in the same capacity I currently am, but I really enjoy, I get bored probably really easy, and I just constantly always find myself having a lot to do, and I'm okay with that. Yeah, I don't think I would be content just having the farm business. I don't know. Things could change in 5 years, and I'll just kind of keep taking it. But right now, I kind of like just juggling everything. I'm not juggling. I think it's being pretty successful. Yeah, I like being able to do both, and I think owning my own business and teaching part-time allows me to do that.
I'm going to say something biased here. All right, is what it is. I think with the entrepreneurial mindset, the changes come easier. You're exactly right. 5 years ago, I did none of this stuff. I didn't have a microphone. I didn't know any of this. I was completely, that was only 5 years ago. So you just never know what happens. But I think with that mindset of owning your own business and seeing how things evolve, I think you're able to pivot. I think you're able to shift easier than maybe someone that doesn't. Again, it's a biased opinion, but I'm just going to say it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
And I think everybody could be an entrepreneur if they wanted to, if there's an interest that they really have and they can go after it and do it. It takes a lot of work. It's not easy. A lot of tears, a lot of sweat. But I think at the end of the day,
it's worth it.
It's worth it. And the farm business isn't really paying enough for me to justify just doing that, since we're all going back into growing in what we're doing. But
I know a guy that can't be an entrepreneur. Just saying.
Yeah. It's definitely on my side. Same reason I could never be a mechanic. For certain types of positions. So it does take a little knack and training.
We'd always find something that does make us happy. I know over the last couple of years, Sarah's gotten more involved in Farm Bureau and some of those where she is technically using her skill set and expertise to be an advisor or technical expert on certain things. And we would probably continue, if the farm business were to be so successful that we could both do whatever we wanted, I'm sure we would probably do more of that.
Oh, if I was the Ohio Farm Bureau, with your guys' education, your experience, and your ability to communicate, I would use you left and right.
Yeah, they kind of got me on their speed dial.
Yes.
Okay. That's a great organization. I've been doing a lot with the Ohio Farm Bureau since we moved back, and now being involved in the American Farm Bureau and our Partners Advocacy Leadership class. It's been an amazing opportunity to really dive in on some of the advanced training like leadership training, and I do have a lot of the knowledge that comes with microbiology and animal science, and now being able to effectively share what that knowledge is and using it for any type of legislation that comes that's related to those issues or other current top agricultural issues, and being able to talk about that.
To broadcast it to multiple audiences and not just within the scientific community.
Do you guys ever go to the Ohio Farm Bureau Young Ag Professionals meeting?
Yeah, we've been 2 or 3 years we've been, and it's an amazing organization. Melinda does an awesome job leading that and creating leaders that are really going to move up in the chain to be really successful and keep carrying that organization forward.
Maybe we could get the shark farmer to come as a keynote next year.
I would say that's a very good bet, January. So we'll just plan on meeting you guys there. No, I look forward to that. Obviously, COVID affected that. It got changed around a little bit. I was so happy when we were able to still have those dates open as they got changed. So, yeah, look forward to meeting you guys there.
Awesome.
Yeah, me
That'll
too.
be great. Everybody should come. Even if you're not from Ohio, register, come.
Except for those people from Iowa. You don't want that.
There are a lot of people that actually get Ohio and Iowa mixed up. You'd be surprised.
So Josh and Sarah Ison out there in Moscow, Ohio. If people want to find you online or on social media, where do they go?
The easiest way to find me is on Instagram at Beef Dr. Sarah, BEEFDRSARAH. And then that'll also link you to our business page, which is Flourish and Roam. And then all my contact information for email and phone numbers directly linked onto those websites.
Okay, and people can reach out to you and ask you dumb questions like I did?
There's no dumb question. They're just inquisitive.
But be prepared that we may talk for quite a long time.
Perfect. Sarah, it was fun having you on the radio. And after we got done, Emily and I said, hey, we got to ask her on the podcast and maybe even her husband, because you guys have a very unique relationship where, you both have the same education, you have the PhDs under the same fields and that, but yet you've gone ahead and you've started in this agriculture field and started with your own herds, and now you're raising chickens of all things. It's just very interesting. And I'm glad we could tack both of you two busy people down for an hour at the same time.
Well, we appreciate you having us.
Yeah, this has been great. Thank you.
All right. Well, Josh and Sarah Ison, thank you very much. And everybody else, we hope you catch us next week.
And thank you for listening to the Shark Farmer Podcast. I am your host, Rob Sharkey. Please visit us at www.sharkyfarms.com. And just search for Shark Farmer to follow me on Twitter. Later.